Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. Whenever we have a conversation about what the Browns' future at quarterback is going to be, there's always a lot of assumptions that get made about what the makeup of the league is. So what I wanted to do was, instead of spending the day arguing assumptions, let's actually get some actual information in this conversation. And look at all the teams that you can comfortably say have starting quarterbacks, right? Like, not all 32 teams in the NFL have starting quarterbacks. Like, some of them have quarterbacks that they're starting, but not necessarily starting quarterback. Like, the Browns have a quarterback that they're starting. The Browns don't have a starting quarterback because there's still obviously questions about what's going to happen next year. So let's look at all the starting quarterbacks in the NFL. And what we're going to do is just sort them by how the team that has them currently acquired them and talk about that. So we're just getting information here, right? Because a lot of people are saying a lot of different things about different ways to get quarterbacks. I wanted to address that conversation and just have some actual information on how quarterbacks are obtained and have a discussion about how that may or may line up and what that looks like and what that means. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code Worst Take. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. Okay, so let's look at how these quarterbacks got to where they are and evaluate that. Then we can have a conversation afterward. So Sam Darnold, who originally was a top 5 pick, did not work out in New York, went to the Carolina Panthers for a little bit, and then ended up in Minnesota, took the job after J.J. McCarthy got hurt, had a rehabilitation year, and then ended up signing in free agency to the Seattle Seahawks. So they got their starting quarterback through free agency. Tyler Shuck, who's been playing some good football, the rookie out of Louisville. He's like the 26-year-old rookie, right? So he is a day 2 selection. You got Kyler Murray, who right now he's on the Cardinals. He was a number 1 overall selection. You also got Bryce Young, a number 1 overall selection. You also got Caleb Williams, a number 1 overall selection. You also have Cam Ward, a number 1 overall selection. You have Tua here, who isn't really the starter for the Dolphins anymore, but they could default back to him because they do owe him a ton of money, and he's not really easy to trade right now. He was, I believe, a top 5 selection. I think he was the 5th selection in the 2020 draft. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but Tua, I believe, is a top 5 selection. And obviously CJ Stroud, another top 5 selection here. Now, Matt Stafford was a number 1 overall pick, but if we look at how he got to the Raiders, it was via a trade. Aaron Rodgers, a late round draft pick initially, but ends up being a free agent for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We got Brock Purdy. We could put him in the day 2 or 3 selection pile. And then we also have Dak Prescott, who's in that day 2 or 3 selection pile. Then you got Bo Nix, picks 6 through 18. So the reason I separated the picks here, since we now have an opportunity to talk about it, there's top 5 picks. There's picks that are early in the first round, but not in what you would call the lottery. So teams that did not make the playoffs that are selecting in the first round. And then you have late first, which is anything after pick 19 to pick 32, all teams that made the playoffs. So that's kind of how this is sectioned out. J.J. McCarthy is a interesting one. I've got to look up real quick exactly where he was drafted. I want to say he was like pick 6 or something. I don't think he was in the top 10. I'm looking at his number, he was drafted 10th overall. So he's in that pick 6 through 10 market right here. Baker Mayfield, another former number 1 overall pick, who then was traded to the Carolina Panthers and then ended up signing in free agency with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Drake May, a top 5 pick. Pat Mahomes in that pick 6 through 10 range. Trevor Lawrence, another top 5 pick here. Jordan Love, gotta confirm this, but I do think he is the first late round guy that we're gonna put here, and he might be the only late round first round pick that we have on this list. So let me look it up right here. Yeah, pick 26, so firmly in late first. My bad, I spoke a little too soon. Lamar Jackson also in late first. Then you have day 2, day 3 here with Jalen Hurts. I believe that is Jared Goff, another former number 1 overall pick that was traded to the Detroit Lions. Then we have Jackson Dart, who was a late first. Let me double check that, make sure he didn't fall at the late end of 18, but I believe Jackson Dart was in the 20s somewhere, right? So Jackson Dart was selected 25th, so late first for Jackson Dart. Josh Allen is a tricky one because I think he was like pick 6. Let me double check here. But I do think Josh Allen, yeah, let me double check here for Josh Allen because he could have been at the edge of top 5. No, he was pick 7. So Josh Allen goes right here. And then Jaden Daniels, a top 5 overall selection. Joe Burrow, a top 5 overall selection. And then Justin Herbert, who was a 6 overall pick in the draft. So if we look at this, the vast majority of starting quarterbacks have been taken in the first round. And then we look at, like, of the first round, what's the most common selection for a starting quarterback in the NFL? It is a top 5 pick here, right? Now we can kind of sort out if we want to look at just draft pedigree, right? We can take these guys out of trade. You got Matt Stafford, a former number 1 overall pick. We also have, did I run out of room? They just make, okay, Jared Goff, another top 5 pick here. Baker Mayfield, another top 5 pick here. And then here and in late first, you would put Aaron Rodgers. So if we just wanted to separate the entire league by draft pedigree, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 players represented that were selected within the top 5 of the NFL draft. Let me tell you how ridiculous of a number that is. All right, so that means, right, that 5 picks in the draft out of what, 256 selections, we'll just go on average, say 256 selections, right? That means that 5 picks, 1.9% of the draft, is responsible for 14 of the 27 starting quarterbacks. It's 51%. So the overwhelming way to find a quarterback prospect, the stock way of finding a quarterback, is by drafting one in the top 5. Again, 5 picks are responsible, or 5 draft selection spots are responsible for 14 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. That is where you go to get a quarterback, right? When I talk about the Browns' tendency to want to shop at Big Lots for quarterbacks and not at the quarterback store, the quarterback store is the top 5 picks of the NFL draft, right? If you're drafting a quarterback in the top 5, that is a well-known, well-trusted way to try to solve your problem. Now, what ends up happening here is that not every draft class has top 5 picks, and a lot of times teams force a top 5 pick selection here with the player. But if we're just speaking in larger averages, the quarterbacks who make it into being a starter into the NFL are the quarterbacks that are usually selected within the top 5. Are there other ways to get a quarterback? Sure. You can draft one later in the first round. Some good names here, right? Patrick Mahomes, he's awesome. You got a name here like Justin Herbert, really good. Bo Nix, Josh Allen, right? Like some of the best quarterbacks in the league have been taken later in the first round or outside the first round. So this is not to say that if you're not a top 5 pick, you're trash and you'll never be a good quarterback. Certainly some good quarterbacks have been taken here, but we're talking about 4 guys in the league that were taken late first. We're talking about 5 guys who are taking 6 to 18. We're talking about 14 guys who are taken with top 5 picks, right? The main way to find a quarterback is to shop here in top 5 pick. You can also, try to trade for a quarterback. Maybe there's something available, maybe there's not, right? That's been successful for some teams in the past. You can hope for a free agent flyer to work out. That's successful for a couple of teams right now. But if we're looking at the most common way to find a quarterback, the top 5 pick is the most common way to find a quarterback. So how does this correlate to the conversations that we're having now? Well, if we want to talk about what the Browns' options are and what the Browns could do and kind of list them out in the same way that we listed out these options, let me go ahead and pull up what that could look like. So if we're looking at what the Browns' options are and how they'll sort out, you got Dante Moore and Fernando Mendoza, who will probably be top 5 picks. Ty Simpson, who's probably going to fall if he comes out 6 to 18 or late first, somewhere in there. And then you have your day 2 pick. This is represented by Drew Aller. He's not the only day 2 pick, obviously. He's just the face of day 2 picks, much like he's the face of your late first selection. And then you have Shedeur Sanders as an option. The Browns could also trade for like a Kirk Cousins, a Tua, or a Kyler Murray, which would be expensive. And then obviously not Dak Prescott, but Russell Wilson, Zach Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo, Daniel Jones, Aaron Rodgers would be like your free agent options here, right? So when we talk about what the Browns' options are, how you find a quarterback, yeah, it's important to understand that top 5 picks aren't the only way to find a quarterback. It's the most common way to find a quarterback. It's the default way to find a quarterback, and it's the most commonly successful way to find a quarterback. But it's not the only way. There are other options, but when you're talking about other options, you got to explain what those options are. Yes, you can trade for a starting quarterback, but if the only quarterbacks available are like Kirk Cousins and Tua and maybe Kyler Murray, that's not the same thing as trading for Jared Goff and getting a pick back for Jared Goff. That's not the same thing from getting Matthew Stafford back in a trade, right? Those aren't equal. You could say, hey, you could sign a quarterback at free agency, but Russell Wilson is not as interesting as Sam Darnold was. Neither is like Zach Wilson or Jimmy Garoppolo or Aaron Rodgers. Daniel Jones could be interesting, but he also tore his Achilles, and he's kind of a quarterback that leans on his athletic ability. So yes, there are other ways to find a quarterback, but you got to ask yourself, hey, are those other avenues looking promising? If you're the Browns, the avenues that probably look the most promising are what? You have the top 2 picks here, Dante Moore, Fernando Mendoza. I don't think the Browns will sniff around here. And I'll rank the Browns quarterback options as to what I prefer and how I see it in another video. But I just wanted to use this video as kind of a baseline for quarterback conversations when people are like, well, top 5 picks don't work out all the time. That's just bullshit. I saw somebody say that like top 5 picks usually don't work out. And if we're talking about like what the probability to hit on a quarterback is in the NFL, which is always going to be adverse, right? It's not easy to hit on a player in the draft. Quarterback's a little bit more difficult. But if we're talking about for the teams that do hit, where they hit at a quarterback, the top 5 is the most common place to look for a quarterback, right? Again, if we're talking about shopping somewhere, that's the quarterback store, right? Going to the quarterback store is drafting a quarterback in the top 5. Doesn't mean you're always going to leave out with a quarterback guaranteed, but you are doing the thing that has historically given most teams in the NFL their best chance at finding a quarterback, which is drafting them in the top 5. So that's all I wanted to say. Y'all have a great day. Have a better night. Peace.